Here we go. Hi there, my name is Kendrick, and today I get to have Nick. So, Nick, welcome.
Hello, thank you, Kendrick.
So, Nick, could you please tell us your full type?
Yes, so I am an ENFP, and in OPS code, I believe I am NEFI, consume sleep, play blast. I'm an MF and social type number two.
Okay, sweet. And what did you think and how did you feel when you got that typing results back?
It was surprising for me because I have been researching MBTI and personality type theory for a while and was firmly within the MBTI system. And I had heard and learned about cognitive functions, and I really grew to view myself as an INFP, like a classic Myers-Briggs INFP. So when I made the video typing, or I did the video typing with OPS, I was kind of hoping actually that they would tell me something totally different, you know, to give me a paradigm switch and give me new things to chew on. And that's what happened. It has been very interesting to start to look through the lens of seeing myself as an EP, and that decider observer coin is a big difference.
Right, for sure. And I guess um, in Myers-Briggs land, you are an INFP because there's no such thing as like an introverted ENFP, right? So it's kind of more
Yeah,
rich. Right.
exactly. Uh,
Yeah. So my first question to you is actually your NF consume. And it's a very good question because you're specifically doing NF stuff. Like you're not to shit on other ENFPs, but I kind of am. But you're actually gathering like NF life experience because you're in Madagascar right now and you are with the Peace Corps. Is that correct?
yes,
And
that's
now
correct.
what are
Yes.
you doing there? You're doing some kind of, make the world a better place kind of deal thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, I guess that's sort of like the aspirational headline. But it's a nuanced sort of thing, I guess. The question there's like the Peace Corps goals. That's what they publicize as far as the what I'm doing here, and that is there's three goals. I'm supposed to provide some kind of technical service to the country, like actually do a job, which in my case is teach English, and then the other two goals are just the exchange of culture and experience, and making friends. Their tagline is like world peace and friendship. So it's very idealistic. Yes.
So, how does that feed your NF consume now that you're doing this thing?
Yeah. So like this process of gathering and consume would be gathering and then sort of processing as far as the concepts or experiences I've gathered, how they um, mesh with my FI, my values, I suppose. Um, and I mean, to me, that's just like that's um, the high fructose stuff that happens in life. I obviously I'm addicted to my savior, so it was a fun idea to sign up for this and imagine that I'll get to experience new culture, including music and art and like social relations, and there's also I get to learn a new language, which is really cool. I've actually been like I've been having so much fun learning Malagasy, uh, which I wasn't sure how that would go for me. I think maybe that is kind of a NESI problem as far as when you learn a new language, it's like a multi-dimensional effort. So you're not just gathering, but you're also producing, you're listening, you're speaking, you're writing, and you're reading. So I think that engages um, all sides. Like it engages the demons and the saviors. But to stop myself from going on a tangent, the NF consume process has been a lot of fun. And at first, when I arrived, it was at its peak because everything was new. And now, having been here for a year and a half, um, I think a lot of that intensity has sort of died down. And like um, I've gotten sort of used to a lot of the things that were once very stimulating, very exciting, and now some of the harder stuff has trickled in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how it is in life in general. Like, after that initial excitement has
Yeah,
wore off, then it's time for like the grind, which is the SI essentially. Which
yeah,
is actually rewarding on its own way if you stick it through. Which is difficult for a lot of ENFPs and also the ENTPs with that SI at the bottom, right? Um, I did want to ask you, so your consume is double activated also, so it's like on crack. But I think what's impressive on what you're doing is you're teaching English, which is blast. So you are actually using your last animal, which is fantastic. Yeah.
yeah. It's very clear. I mean, it could not be more clear that I am trying to use a demon animal every time I show up to work. Um, I I really struggle. It has to be one of the biggest challenges that I've had in these 2 years, and um, I mean that's partly why I signed up for it. I think back when I signed up for the Peace Corps and signed up to be an English teacher, I wasn't yet familiar with OPS, so I don't think I recognized that it was a blast position, but I was familiar with the fact that it was a daunting task and that I would be hopefully exercising skills that were not comfortable to me. And that's exactly how it's been. It's been very hard.
Oh, so you actually look forward to practicing that teaching thing, even though you didn't know back then what
Yeah.
last animal.
Yeah, I think I have always kind of had the mindset, I'm sure thanks to my parents, that if something's hard for me, it's good to sign up for it and try. And that's the clincher is it's very hard for me to personally bring the motivation in day-to-day life to exercise my demons. But if I sign up for something, like if I literally sign a paper saying, I'm going to show up to this job as a teacher, that's the kind of thing that actually uh, makes it happen and brings it into reality. And it's still so hard, but at least I respect it and I end up showing up and trying.
I feel like that's also your social type coming into play, being a number two, because you have broad responsibility, right? So you're taking responsibility
Yeah.
for ST Blast, you're taking responsibility to learn Malagasy, and then, so you're doing a bunch of stuff. And obviously, as a teacher, you're running the classroom. So you're like almost the generalist, having to manage a room full of people.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you about that actually. How you saw that the relationship between being like a number two, a and you'll have to tell me by the way what your social type is, but as I understand it, you are an ENFP. Oh, you're also a number two?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is perfect. I'd love to hear your perspective on having Demon SI, but being a number two, because I associate that word responsibility with SI. I mean, it just sounds like that to me. Um,
Yeah. Do you have
it's
any specific questions about that?
yeah. The question is like, how can that be if SI sounds like the kinds of responsible tasks that you would be performing. If that's your demon animal, how does that work to have a social responsibility? It seems conflicting to me.
I think it is, but also not. So it is in a sense that you have to use the SI, which is triggering for both of us, being both ENFP types. Like you can't get around it. It's gonna be triggering, like if you had to organize concrete things, especially if it's paperwork related, right? Um, but at the same time, if your FI locked into it, then you are going to take it on head on. And even if you hate it, you will still take pride in your work, essentially.
Yeah,
But if your FI doesn't lock into it, then you're gonna hate it, even if you're like a generalist. because I look back at like in the past where I've had jobs where my boss was making me do some SI stuff that I did not feel like is going to benefit me in the long term. Because like I think for us being ENFPs, we still have that NE at the top. So that means we have multiple futures, future possibilities essentially. And if we're gonna do it SI, it must be moving. It must be like a ladder, a stepping stone, essentially, that's moving us closer to one of those possibilities that our FI has locked into, right? So if we don't see that this SI thing is not gonna get us there, or it absolutely has nothing to do. It's completely irrelevant. We don't want to do it. We're not gonna do it. And if we do it, we're gonna be very disgruntled. But if it's within that vision that we have for that NE and then also the FI, like what I'm and or you uh, resonate with, then you know what, bring it on. Bring it on. That especially both of us, we have double masculine SF sleep, right? We're like, fuck it, let's bring it on. Let's do this. Um, I don't care how triggered I am. I'm gonna fucking do this. And it's like that feeling is there. So I think that's like the best way to describe what a generalist is, because I've seen other ENFPs who are not this kind of generalist kind of personality type, number twos, and they will say bring it on, but for like their narrowed down area of responsibility, just for like that niche. Everything else, they're like, no, 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 someone else do that. So I think it is a contradiction if you think about it, but kind of not, because lead consume activates number two, social type number two. So for you, your first animal actually is a direct connection with your social type. Your cognitive dissonance is happening from your sleep and play coin, because sleep activates flex and play activates friends, but then you have demon uh, flex, but then you have sleep savior, and then your demon play, but then you have friend savior, right? So you're gonna have a little bit of a cognitive dissonance there, but it's not the worst because it's still in the middle, right? You know.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're very good at explaining these things. I appreciate it.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, so since we are already on this topic, then can you share a little bit about your double masculine SF sleep, just from your own perspective, and then I'll throw out some questions for you based on the different aspects of it.
Yeah, I might be using your questions as a bit of a crutch because entering into the sexuals and the socials territory, I am diminishing returns on my understanding. But yeah, so the sleep function consists of my SIFI, and my impression of that process is that it's an intensely introverted process where I'm um, processing things, the stuff that I've gathered. So if it's a double masculine process, this would mean that it is, and you'll see I'm just sort of like saying this out loud to try to process it in real time, but it's a process that I'm not movable on, which means that I'm likely to um I think once this enters the like what it looks like in practice, I get a little confused. I'm not sure what it would mean for me to be, for instance, uh movable in my sleep process.
Yeah, I mean it's SF, right? So it's very aggressive, first of all. Yours is in a savior state though, so it's a little bit different. So it does have even though it's aggressive, it's also a little bit on the calm side. Mine is not calm at all. Mine's last. So for your blast, it's
Okay.
not really calm because you have blast last, but it's your demon, right? But then for me, I have sleep. So my SF sleep is super um it's confident in what I want, and you're gonna be the same because we
Yeah.
have the same sexual modality. But yours is
Hmm.
not, mine is gonna be super aggressive and more offensive than yours, because yours is in a savior state. Mine is not. Mine is in a demon state. You know.
I would love an example of this. Like, what does it look like for you to do that in an aggressive way?
Yeah, for sure. So this is gonna sound horrible. I hope I don't offend anyone. So
Sure.
one thing I used to say when I was younger was like, I'm not gonna date a girl with short hair. Like, 'cause
Yeah.
I think short hair on girls is not attractive. I know some guys are into that. I have friends that are into girls with short hair. Not me. I like girls with long hair. So as a matter of fact, when my girlfriend cut her hair short at one point, I was like, and she was like, that's so mean. And then I'm like, well, I can't help it. It's my last animal. I'm gonna have like a demon reaction to something that I don't SF find like that I resonate with, right? But then obviously after my girlfriend cut her hair short, she's later on she realized like, oh, she liked it better when it was long. So but so we're okay with that because we're like she's not doing it for me, right? But like um so yeah, so it's kind of that stuff. There's some other worse stuff than this. I'm just giving you one example because obviously double masculine is really aggressive, you know. Maybe I should just say it. I don't know if I should. You know what? I don't want to offend anyone. I'm not gonna say it. It's gonna get worse. Okay.
Okay, I think I have an example. Thanks to your wonderful example, I that really helped to clarify it for me. A pretty good example that I think people notice if they people might know come to know if they get to know me well. Um, I have very like immovable relationships with I guess so. For instance, hygiene. Um, I since I was a very little kid, made kind of like a gut decision, I guess, I did on how I felt about brushing my teeth. And I hated the taste of mint. So, without any sort of TE reason, I decided mint is bad, toothpaste is bad, and I'm just going to brush my teeth with water. And I was not informed at all by any kind of, medical input or parental approval. Um, but since then, I have done this. I brush my teeth with just water, and I've never had any cavity or anything like that. Um, but it was definitely like a personal introverted process. I never looped anyone else into it. It was kind of just like this is what feels good to me, and this has become my sensory system for how I handle that. Uh, and now if someone asks me about it or puts it into question, I'm completely uninterested in moving in that way. It's like, I think maybe if someone was saying, geez, Nick, your breath is really bad, or I got some kind of like, demon TE slap me in the face, that might call me to like revisit in my own personal time. I might dedicate some space to re-engineering this thing. But as of yet, it's worked for me, and I feel so confident about it, and I'm not interested in changing it. And a satisfying part of my existence that I have a personally satisfying toothbrushing technique.
I think the first thing that popped in my head when you said that, I was like, isn't there toothpaste with no mint? Like that's the first thing that I was thinking about. Like,
Yeah,
why did you use one of those if you hated mint? Because then, you know,
I tried that. I had like a personal experimentation process where I was like consuming different approaches, but I guess I don't know. I just settled on feeling like the toothpaste was like um how do I put this? It felt like an atom bomb for my mouth. Like it was just so aggressive, and it seemed unnecessary because I was able to just use like, you know, a mechanical process and water to get everything out, and then pay attention to my diet and like, eat an apple every once in a while to shock the pH and everything. But I started thinking about it like there's like a bacterial microbiome. And I think this is really NF bullshit because it's not grounded in I wasn't like reading articles on this, but
right.
I just I just developed a narrative in my head of what the situation is, and then now I certainly don't feel movable on it.
Okay, gotcha. I think maybe that's how we differ because I have ST in the savior state, the ST blast, because I'm
Okay.
a blast consume sleep, right? And I'm like in my head, I'm like, oh my God, I wonder what like what the data is on this. I mean, it's working for you. And
Yeah.
what did the dentist tell you when you tell them this? Like, are they cool with it or
I'm always kind of like cheeky about it, so I don't tell them at first, but I wait until they give me their feedback on my teeth, and they're always so complimentary. They say, "Wow, you brush your teeth so well. You've got such nice teeth," And I go, yeah, that's right, I do. And then I'll ask them, so what would you think about, not using toothpaste? And actually, surprisingly, a lot of dentists have told me that it's not technically necessary, and that's anecdotal. That's just what they've told me, but it was very vindicating when they told me that.
And do you use an electric toothbrush or do you just like clean it like manually?
I use a normal toothbrush, but I'm kind of a maniac about it. I brush my teeth and shake my head at the same time, and I get a lot of friction going on, and then I rinse with water in between and make sure that it's coming out clear and tasteless. It's like it's a satisfying process. I'm making sure it gets done well, and yeah, never had any issues with it.
There's a YouTuber I watch. His name is Johnny Harris. I don't know if you've ever seen his YouTube video. I don't know if he's an ENFP or not. He seems like he's an ENFP, but he has like that kind of thing that you're doing, but instead of toothpaste, he doesn't use shampoo in his hair, you know. And it's like it's like, huh. Well, this is definitely like a weird thing, you know. But and
I
so
also don't do that. So
oh, you also don't use shampoo?
no, I use conditioner, but there is actually some precedent for this. I have never found a community around brushing your teeth with just water, although that might exist. But there is absolutely a community for people with curly hair who don't use shampoo because it strips the natural oils from your hair. And so the term is like co-wash, and people will just wash their hair with conditioner.
Oh, okay. I know women do that, you know, for their hair, but like I guess a lot of dudes are doing it nowadays too. Okay, cool. That's a good example of SF immovableness with the SI specifically, which is toothpaste. Um so I want to go over the different dimensions of SF sleep and I want to hear what your perspective is on those different dimensions, okay? So SF sleep is also having a health routine that feels good for you. So your body feels good essentially. And it's not just your body, but it's a lot of different aspects to it. So the four dimensions to that SIFI health routine would include exercise, there's nutrition, there is your physical sleep, and finally there's mental health. Okay. So how would you describe your routine, your SI routine for each of those, if you have one. And are you missing anything in any of those four, or are you someone that's channel changing a lot and you don't stick to those routines personally?
Okay, so we're talking about routine in four aspects of my SI situation. And can you just say those one more time and I'll go down the list?
Sure, of course. So, so
Nutrition.
it's so SIFI health routine is exercise, nutrition, physical sleep, and mental health.
Okay. So exercise, I'm all over the place. Uh, there have been times in my life where I've had a regular exercise routine and it was wonderful. And that certainly a lot of happiness came from that. And that only ever worked for me when I had a routine set with a person who I cared about, who would be in contact with me about, hey, we're going again today at this time, and they would hold me accountable. I absolutely love rock climbing. I worked on farms for a while, and that was like, a part of my job was exercise, and that's really nice. I love it when there's kind of a structure that I have signed up for that gives me no choice but to show up and use my body. So yeah, I think that's. But like for instance, right now in this nebulous space of my Peace Corps existence, um, it's totally up to me what I do throughout the day, and my job teaching English doesn't involve exercise necessarily. And there's no places I can go rock climbing, and there's sometimes I'll go for a bike ride, but when I go outside, I get eaten by mosquitoes, so there's some disincentive there. I don't exercise these days, and I'm really looking forward to being in a situation again that feels like I have kind of organic contextually appropriate access to it. Um, to be there, I want to create the context first and then uh, have that play into exercise. The second thing was, I'm sorry, this is going to be hard for me. What was the second one?
Oh, it's your nutrition, your eating habits, like eating healthy and stuff.
Okay. Okay, my nutrition. Yeah, my nutrition. Uh, I I tend to really prioritize my nutrition, and when I was sort of exiting high school and gaining more agency, I developed a love for cooking, and I love to really what I really love is experimentation in cooking. I mean, it just brings me like a ton of satisfaction to have a set of ingredients and then the puzzle of like what can I make with these ingredients. Um, I'm not sure how that plays into the functions, but certainly a lot of people I meet do not relate to that. They prefer to have a recipe, and I am like completely freewheeling, like, I never cook the same meal twice. um but I usually gear it towards a general sense of nutrition, like the idea that I should have a colorful plate and a protein and a variety of vegetables and fruits and all of that sort of. um it's not something I struggle with unless there is like a tidal wave situation happening. um I right now, actually, in this moment, can't say that I have a great nutrition because my kitchen, I live in rural Madagascar, and my kitchen is just like a wooden shack outside of my house. And there is currently a rat infestation, and they've been ripping up my sponges and pooping all over everything. And I will, it's sort of embarrassing to admit this. So maybe that's because it's a demon function for me, but I am terrified of rats and rodents in general. And it has sort of snowballed into a crisis where I would rather walk into town and eat just rice in the one place in town that sells food, rather than clean up and address the rat tidal wave. Um, so for like the last 2 months, I have not had a great nutritional balance. I've been pretty much just eating rice. I've definitely lost some weight, and I've been kind of texting SOS to my friends looking for motivation to get past the tidal wave, evict the rats, clean up the kitchen, and get back to my like SF sleep process of uh, treating my body like a temple and getting enjoyment and fulfillment from my cooking. Yes, so that would be what comes to mind for nutrition. What is the next bullet?
I just want to say, I would hate to live in your situation. Oh my God, that sounds, my SI is it's not that I'm not scared of rats. I'm scared of cockroaches, and there's lots of cockroaches in Madagascar. So I would be
Yes.
freaked out. Cause I've been there, right? So like I remember I was in what's that, Morondova? Is that the name of the city in the west side? Yeah, there were so many cockroaches there, and I was like, you know what? Screw this. Um, so yeah, and then like the giant cockroaches around the world, it's actually called the Madagascar cockroach, right? So it's like, it did come from there. So the giant ones, the horrible ones that's, in other countries now came from there, right? So that's like the breeding ground for that stuff. So I was like, oh, you're living in rural Madagascar? You must have so many cockroaches then.
Yeah, it's a lot of cockroaches. For like the first few months I was in my house, um, everything was what's the word? Permeable. It was all accessible to rats and bugs of all kinds. So I slept in a mosquito net. But yeah, it really freaked me out, and it got to me, and it made me feel like, my skin was crawling anytime when I was outside of the mosquito net. It's like a really big crisis thing for me. So um as embarrassing as it is to admit that, I uh I took it seriously as a crisis and tried to, like, I guess this would be, I'm not sure which function this activates, but it was hard for me to get started. And I I put netting on all of my windows, and then I put rubber strips in my doorways. So my house is now bug proof, and it's a beautiful thing. I can actually like relax in my house. The one thing that I do still really struggle with in my house, like the place where my bed is that's bug proofed, is fleas. Because when I go around in town, fleas like to hitch a ride on my pants, and then I get back home and then I find that I'm itchy, and then I realize they came home with me, and if they've bitten me, that means they've laid eggs, and that means they're coming again, and they're just gonna be more and more, and I'm their source of food, and it drives me crazy, and I can't sleep. Um, so it was like that was one of the biggest crisis sort of problems I've had in Madagascar so far, was addressing that to the point where I was satisfied that I could prevent it, because just getting fleas and then putting the poison down and not knowing when they're going to come back again is not enough for me. I need to know that I can reliably prevent it. Um, and that took like a few months of hell. I mean, it's dramatic to say, but it was really awful, because on the topic of SI routines, I was not sleeping and I was starting to feel crazy.
Yeah, no, I can totally relate because on my first month of my 1 year trip, I was in Vietnam, and my bedroom on the first night had an infestation of 8 cockroaches, and coming out of the drain from the washroom, and yeah, it was horrible because obviously SI problems, right? So like this bug is like invading my room, um. And it took like a week to resolve, but that fear never went away. Every time I would hear like scratching noise in the wall, I feel like they're there, especially like being an audio person, you could probably relate also, like the smallest noise will like cause anxiety, especially being an observer with missing information. It's like, what is that, what's that noise, right? So that's really triggering for sure. One last thing in this topic before I ask you about your sleep, as part of the routine, is spiders, right? So Madagascar has lots of spiders also, and SI people apparently are really scared of spiders. I was when I was young. I got over it when I had a friend. It's really funny. It's me and an ISTJ friend, right? So my ICJ friend is also deathly afraid of spiders. So it must be like an SI thing. But he made like this kind of unfair bet with me, but I took it because I knew he was gonna be more scared than I was. So one of my friend, I don't know what type he is. I think he's an IP of some sort, maybe an ISFP. But anyways, he said, okay, we're gonna get my pet tarantula to crawl on your hand. And I was like dying inside, right? I was like, oh fuck. Oh my God. And my friend said, okay, I'll touch it, Kendrick, if you let it crawl on your hand. I'm like, that's not fair. You're only gonna touch it, and then I'm gonna have this thing crawling on me. But then I paused for a second. I thought about it, right? I'm like, wait a minute. I think he's more scared than me. I don't think he's gonna touch it. So I had a tarantula crawl on my hand, and inside I was dying. I was like, fuck me, you know. But then I pretended to be cool outside, and then my friend took it off my hand. I'm like, whew, thank God. And my friend, after when I looked at him, he was like far away because he ran away, right? Because he wasn't gonna do it. And then they tried to put a tarantula in him, and then he like had a panic attack. Um, so, but ever since then, since like exposure therapy, my fear of spider has been decreased by 50%. So it's actually not bad anymore. I can kill them now. I don't care. I still hate them, but I don't like the fear is not there compared to cockroaches, right? So what's your experience with like spiders? Because that's like a big SI thing, that even Dave said it's like a big SI thing, SI demon thing.
Okay, yeah. And by the way, I apologize in advance if it's messing up the audio, that there's some kids playing in a pool behind me. Let me know if it's like a serious problem, and I'll try to find a different space. Um, is it like disruptive?
No, it's not your audio. It's your video freezes sometimes.
Oh, really? Okay.
But
That
it,
might
it
just be the sort.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're in Madagascar. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so spiders, on the subject of spiders, I definitely had a strong fear of them, like horrifying fear. And I think that is past tense now. I can sort of say that I've had enough exposure to them in this kind of brute force, um what's it called? Exposure therapy, of I worked on farms and lived in rural areas where I was like sleeping in a yurt in California, and there were plenty of spiders constantly. And then now here in Madagascar. And I will say that thankfully in Madagascar, there are very, very few bugs or animals that are venomous or capable of killing a person or hurting a person seriously. So I'm pretty well assured that except for the black widow, I'm safe to coexist with spiders. And I've tried to look at it conceptually and like appreciate them for hunting the other bugs that I hate, like mosquitoes and stuff. Um, but and flies are so annoying. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna flip out if there's a spider on my hand, and I would be very hard pressed to agree to put a tarantula on my hand. I think maybe I would do it for the kind of like it's just fun to accept challenges that are like mind over matter. Um, but it would be terrifying. Yeah, I have a lot of respect for you that you were able to get past that.
I think the motivation of seeing my friend freaked out was bigger than my own fear. The inner
Yeah,
NE troll in me was stronger than the fear of the spider.
yes, yes. If I'm ever going to get over a fear, it's absolutely with the assistance of a NE kind of like chaotic approach to maybe like making myself laugh or confusing someone else. I mean, I've done some sort of uh like one time I ate an entire orange with the rind on, even though the idea of it like was freaky to me. I didn't know if it was gonna really sting or be awful, but I still ended up doing it because it was so funny. The idea of freaking out my friend who was watching me do it.
That's funny. I wonder if that's like a
Yeah,
weird SI thing too. Maybe SINE.
maybe.
Like, I because I eat like the way I eat is also pretty weird. Like people always look like I remember I was in Poland before doing like an English teaching camp of some sort, and I wasn't like a teacher or anything, but I was like coaching the Polish people on how to speak English. And I remember the other volunteers would actually film me eating like during lunch because they said the way I ate was so weird. Like I was like, "What? You?" I was like, I remember there was this one girl who like kept taking pictures of me while I was eating, and she would post it on Facebook to just show everyone in our group how weird I was when I was eating. And
What was weird about it?
I don't know. Like she was like, it's like, when Kendrick eats, he'll squish his rice first before he'll like, eat it. Like he just won't like, if we have like a pile of rice, he won't just like take it from the top and eat it with like whatever. He'll like squish it first so it's flat, and then he'll eat it, right? And then she started making like memes of me, like she had like a picture of like a remote control of like a TV, and then instead of batteries, there's like carrot sticks in the middle, carrot sticks, and then like banana being eaten with a spoon, just like some weird shit. Because like apparently that's like I was like, what? Like, so I wonder if that's like a weird ENFP thing.
Yeah, and I assume that as a double decider, that did not perturb you too much to be, made fun of in that way.
No, I thought it was amusing, but like I remember in that camp there was like a girl who was like a social type number one. And I think she did not like the fact that I was suddenly getting being the center of attention from the group because I was for the weirdest thing, just like me eating food in a weird way, because she wants to be number one and she wants, all eyes on her, right? But then that when that other girl started trolling me with like the way I was eating, and then that became like a thing with the group because everyone's like always watching me when I'm eating. I'm like, hey, stop looking at me, I'm eating, let me eat in peace. Yeah, so
Yeah,
I thought it was just kind of funny, but I was like, but double decider, so it doesn't really bother me. I just observation to the end, right?
totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
Anyways, your sleep, man. What is your sleep routine like? How is it?
Yeah. Um, so this is actually a big question that I have, and something that I'm still sort of processing the meaning of and how it connects to OPS. Because, and I would love your thoughts on it. I am apparently a lead sleep. I'm consumed sleep, so it's a big animal for me. Um, but like the actual sleeping that happens physically, um, uh, throughout high school, throughout being a kid, if I had access to stimulation, which I would assume is a consume situation, like I could, watch TV or read a book or I don't know, scroll on a phone, I would absolutely choose that anytime over sleeping until my body forced me to sleep. And this is the kind of like revenge bedtime procrastination thing people talk about. Um, but it really is just like the addiction to consuming, I think. And I'm surprised that if sleep is my second animal, that the like physical manifestation of that wouldn't be, I don't know, like compatibly balanced with my consume, because it was a notable thing. I would really push the limits of it and I would be chronically tired, in the way that like Dave and Shan talk about sleep last people being chronically tired, like sleepy eyes, and maybe that's just my mope. But when I got to college, it became like a like a bad situation, because I finally had the liberty to decide how extreme I was going to take that imbalance. And I would stay up, like at its worst, I stayed up for 3 days in a row without sleeping. And it was kind of just like maybe I could say like an NE troll, like uh, mm, scoffing at the SI sort of situation, where I just didn't really believe that it was necessary, and I wanted to see how far I could take it. And I certainly didn't respect the real consequences, the physical consequences of disrespecting that process. Um, I just kind of saw it as like a fun exercise in in my limit for either like pain tolerance or sleepiness tolerance. But it was really bad. I went for 3 days without sleeping, and I kind of became a zombie. And I was exploiting the fact that if I'm watching a movie, I physically cannot fall asleep. Like it's impossible for me to go to sleep no matter how tired I am. If there's a movie on, it just doesn't happen. Um, and then I faced some serious consequences. I fell asleep on the third day, and then I found that I had a bunch of cysts all over my body, and uh, you know, sorry if that's TMI, but there were sensory consequences. I suddenly developed an allergy to my bed sheets, and I still have this allergy, but it just spontaneously arose. I think my body went into kind of emergency mode, and was like identifying an enemy to try to explain why it was experiencing such horrible distress, and it chose my bed sheets. So I got all full body hives, and that ended up actually making it harder to sleep, of course, because I didn't know that it was my bed sheets that were giving me hives. So for the next 2 years, I took allergy medication to suppress the symptoms, which was my body, SI screaming at me saying, please stop sleeping in these sheets. It's awful. You're making us itchy. And I was just suppressing it with allergy medication, and no doctors could tell me what it was. They did full panel tests. And eventually, I just kind of got sick of the SI routine of taking them. And then I woke up one morning and I started to feel like my hurting, and my wrist was sitting on the bed sheet. And in that moment, I went, wait a second, is this what has been giving me hives this whole time? Um, and I tested it out, and put my other wrist on the bed sheet, and identified that that was the problem, and switched my bed sheets, and haven't had a problem since. Uh, but the big picture takeaway from that sort of crisis time where I flew too close to the sun was that I really need to respect my sleep. And now sort of like a parental voice that I identify with more comes into play when I find myself disregarding it again. And I still do. There's still a lot of times where I unconsciously ignore my sleep needs. But now that I have the experience of going too far with it, uh, I can check myself before I wreck myself, and and I'm pretty good about it now. I have learned how to sort of plug that into my FI, like having the balance, and now I identify more with being like a responsible sleeper and enjoying sleep and kind of like um I don't know, prioritizing it, but still definitely fall out of that routine. And I yeah, basically just want to hear your thoughts on like how I can reconcile what it means to have had such a dramatic disregard for the actual physical process of sleep and to be a sleep first type or sorry, a sleep dominant type.
The only thing I could think of is like there's I think two aspects of it. So the first one is um you probably have ADHD because most people with NE has ADHD. Like I got diagnosed with it last year and I'm like 39 years old. So I got diagnosed as an adult. I wish I knew sooner that I had it. So whenever you're getting something that gives you dopamine that you can't stop, it's like a drug, like ultimately as an ENFP, you want to have freedom, but you actually don't have freedom. You are a prisoner to the dopamine, essentially. So it's like a kind of it's almost like an irony where like I want to have the freedom to do what I want, but what I want to do is actually not what I want to do. It's what my ADHD wants me to do. So I'm not in control of myself. Actually, it's the ADHD. And most people with NE do have ADHD. It's like a thing. The severity varies, obviously, right? But so that's the first thing I can think of is like you let the ADHD. I'm pretty sure you have it. Like I think everyone with NE has it. Like guarantee everyone. If you have extrovert intuition, you probably have ADHD. And I don't think ADHD is a bad thing. I think it's actually a superpower. So like it's only an ADHD because we're supposed to work in an office and it doesn't work out for ENFPs. But regardless, so what I'm trying to say is like yeah, that you let the ADHD take control. And it happens to me too, by the way. It's not like it's just you. Like I know when I'm like so obsessed at doing something or consuming something, even though I have consumed demon and I can't stop. Like let's say playing a video game, and it's like 4 a.m. already, and I can't stop. I know it's my ADHD. It's just like I can't control it. It is what it is. And then but I think on the flip side of that though, there's a lot of people with leads who are sleep savior, even double activated sleep would play last that won't sleep, like Mr. Beast is a good example, right? He's play last, consume sleep, blast play, but he's a number one. So he just wants to work and conquer. And he feel and the way he like structures it is like, I watch like a lot of his interviews, if not all of them, because I'm trying to like figure out like the way he thinks and stuff. Because like I think for ENFPs, he's like the good um role model in terms of like how to succeed in this world that we live in, because this guy is like number one in this one area, right? It's like, oh shit, there's like someone of our type that reached this high level. That's really good, so what I learned is like the way he lives his life is he won't sleep until he's absolutely exhausted and he has to pass out. He'll just keep working, um and he won't take a day off until he's absolutely hit burnout. That's it. And that's literally it. And he's double activated sleep, double activated SF sleep because he's play last, right? He's consumed sleep, play blast, or blast play, sorry. So I think that's how like ENFPs operate. It's like um you're either in a state of scatteredness or hyper focus. And I think when you get to hyper focus, you have to write it out because you don't know when it's gonna come back, you know. Because the typical state for ENFPs is scatteredness, right? But the hyper focus does exist. So when it happens, don't do what the IJs do and follow the structure, because for EPs, you never know when you're gonna get that productivity window again. So you better take advantage of it. I mean, that's how I interpret it.
I
Being savior.
I completely relate to that. And what you're saying highlights for me that like for someone learning this system, the OPS system like me, that there's an important distinction to make, it seems, between the SI label of sleep and the actual process, the OPS process of sleep. Um, uh, so to put that into a concise way, like, maybe Mr. Beast is not getting much sleep as an organism, but his sleep process would be like in terms of the functions, literally just the FISI processing of his, I don't know, like, what his plans are for making videos and all of that kind of stuff. Um, so yeah, I think sometimes it's kind of seductive to use the terms that we have that OPS has applied to these processes as mm, uh, as being represented in SI reality by the literal namesake process. But there can be kind of like a counterintuitive uh, de ace I don't know what the word I'm looking for there is, counteractive discrepancy between like how much sleep you get literally and then what sleep process you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. So I think ultimately it's what your SF sleep, what the goal is that you have. That's what you're gonna respect over
Mhm.
everything else. Yes, of course, the physical sleep is part of sleep. Especially you're energy dom, so maybe you sneak in like rest time or chill time in between the day. But there's a lot of people with like sleep savior, like Kobe Bryant, for example. He only slept like what 4 to 5 hours per day. um, and he's consumed sleep, play, blast, ESFP, right? You know, but then the way he saw sleep was it got in the way of achieving his goals, which is to be the best basketball player. So he always, was already in the gym by like what 4:30 a.m. or 5 a.m. or something. And then he would just keep practicing shots. He's the first one to go on the basketball court to start practicing shooting, last one to leave, you know. And then when he gets home, he spends time with his daughters, right? And then he said, he phrased it really well too. Like the way he said it was like, my daughters don't care that I'm tired from working out and practicing basketball and playing basketball all day. The only thing they're gonna think is that why is daddy not playing with me? So it's my responsibility to be a good dad, and whatever time I have left, no matter how much energy he has left, he's gonna spend with his kids. Even though he's play demon and he's number one, he still took the time to spend time with his daughter, right? So something has to go, and that was physical sleep, right? And you can't argue with the result. He has like what, five NBA championship rings, and he has an Oscars. Can you believe that? It's not just like, he's reached number one in two arenas, right? So it's like, maybe there's like a time, there's like a saying like, I'll sleep when I'm dead, you know. But I feel like you can abuse your body up until 40. That's just my opinion. Like, and then I think once you hit 40, then you got to respect the physical sleep. But I think until then, you can kind of go crazy because everything else is reversible from what I can see.
I don't know about that. I mean,
Not not
I
not
like
not your level,
the
sorry. Not 3 days of no sleep, but like, like less sleep.
okay, yeah, so like, the patterns of, being tired and all of that, that is reversible, but yeah, obviously if you push it too far, then it's not. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, dude. Last aspect of that SF sleep, mental health.
Yes. Oh, right. This is the last bullet in my. I see what you're saying. Okay. Um, mental health is an interesting an interesting term. Um, I find that my mental health is usually a indirect relation to my physical health and the physical sort of stability of my SI routines. So, for instance, if I clean my room, um, my mental space gets cleaned and it's a beautiful thing and everything opens up and the world is brighter and my body is lighter and it's rose colored glasses. But if I let things stack up and I ignore my demon, then it becomes pretty soul crushing, and the mental health starts to decline, and it's sort of a self perpetuating cycle. And the most reliable way for me to escape that cycle or prevent it is people. If I have people in my life who are kind of part of the routines, or reinforcing the routines, participating in the routines, then it helps to pull me out of that, because I don't know if that's the number two responsibility factor, or just being a double decider, like keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. um but it helps a lot. And right now in Peace Corps in Madagascar, living alone, with where my sensory routines are completely up to me, and I can drop the ball, and no one holds me accountable, and my friends don't notice. It can get pretty bad, and my mental health has sometimes been um, worse than I'm used to it being. But I guess I'm trying to get creative with ways to balance that out. And um, yeah, that's pretty much it. I think it's kind of a secondary thing. My mental health feels like um, well, I guess I should respect that there's the other dimension of mental health that has to do with kind of like your beliefs and your concepts, and say like how you process your relationships, and maybe the narratives you have about your life direction and all of that stuff. And I feel pretty good about that. It's not, these kids are yelling, and I'm scared that it's gonna ruin the audio. Um,
Fine, man. I can't even hear them.
yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you. Um, uh, yeah, so I definitely struggled with a lot of those big picture questions around my life, and even like my identity, which had to do with why I saw myself as an IP, because um, social anxiety and insecurity and um, I don't know, stress about where I'm going to go in my life. All of those things did really weigh on me, and do. Um, they're present in my mind, but I spent some like pretty critical, some crucial energy on that and time on that in college, and then especially right after college, when I was like living in little communities of people working on farms. That was like the golden age of my reconciliation with those things. And um, sorry if that all sounded really NF, but I'm feeling a lot more stable with regard to kind of the big picture narratives around my identity and my life path. And now it's much more stark, the like how much of an effect my just sensory routines have on my mental health. That's like the big thing.
Yeah, it's all good, man, if you talk in NF terms because you are lead NF, and people watching this interview want to see what an ENFP is like. So all good, man. All good.
Yeah.
Um, I think the interesting thing about that mental health stuff is I did a panel interview before with all the Delta Quadrant people, which is like, ENFP, ISTJ, ESTJ, and INFP, like everyone in our quadra essentially. And the way everyone approached mental health was completely different, just because of where that FI was into. So like the INFP obviously had no trouble directly accessing that emotion and resolving that emotion that they were having. Um, Same as the ENFP. But I thought it was interesting with the ESTJ and ICJ, despite the fact that they're in the same quadra as us, they approach it quite differently. So the ESTJ did not want to approach the FI because the FI is scary, right? So they did everything else, like kind of like what you were mentioning earlier, like cleaning your room or going for a workout or eating healthy. So they did all the SI like things related stuff that you can do, and hopefully that would fix the FI. And some did fix the FI, but obviously some stuff you do have to directly go to that emotion, right? And then the ISTJ was also very interesting because they did something similar to the ESTJ, where like um in that panel interview I had, so Hannah, the ISTJ girl, she said that she would go for coffee or something. Like find some kind of object to fix that emotion. But if the object does not fix the emotion because she's still a double decider, she'll go to try for help. So go see a counselor or something. So I thought it was really interesting to see like all the different differences where like if you had SI higher, then you would look for the object to fix the emotional problem first. But if you have FI, because in that interview, the ENFP Chinzia, she just said, "Oh, I have no problem just going to my FI and just figuring out why I feel the way I feel," you know. So uh, just thought I'd add that. Yes, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, and I for some reason I hadn't thought about it in those terms that like a big part of mental health is just your relationship with your FI. And that part I am absolutely comfortable with. I mean, I if I feel bad about something, I take responsibility for that and I'm very comfortable like, I'm going to go find my own space and I'm not sure if this is a consume sleep thing, but I'm going to go uh, separate and I'm going to process and I'm going to think it through and probably connect it to some NFBS or, big picture ideas about what's going on in my brain, why I feel this way. And I'm going to reconcile it completely on my own. Like if, uh, yeah, the FI thing, it's a very comfortable, fluid process, but the SI, the way my SI impacts my FI, that part is very tenuous.
Yeah. All right, dude.
Yeah.
Next question is gonna be an interesting one. And I kind of want to do like a compare and contrast thing here. Because I want to ask about your NT play. It's the same as mine in the sense that it's double feminine, um, NT play. However, the difference is I am lead NETE as an ENFP. So I'm an NT person and you are lead NF, right? But we still both have the NT play. So I'm really curious, what's going through how would you describe your existence on like a normal typical day, um and I'm gonna explain how mine is real quick just to give you a baseline on how to explain yours, okay? So being lead NT, I always am trying to figure things out at all times. And maybe as an NF lead, maybe you're not doing that. Maybe you're vibing or doing something else. And I'm curious to hear what that is, right? Um, but for me as a lead NT, like every waking moment is being used to figure something out, figuring out how I'm going to make my next YouTube video, figuring out my schedule for all my interviews, figuring out my schedule, when I'm going to talk to my girlfriend because we're doing long distance relationship right now, figuring out, like I'm just always trying to figure things out. Like I'm using my NA to look at the future and my TE and how I'm going to solve each of these problems, right? So problem solving, that's NT, right? NT. Especially if I get to do it with a tribe, that's even better, right? Because it's play. So my question to you is, um, what is your like normal existence is like? Like what's going through your head? What are you trying to do? Is like the vibing thing, is that something that you're doing? Or maybe not, because you're number two, so maybe you're more business oriented also. And also the second part of that is, how do you use your anti play personally? Problem solving with a tribe and whatnot.
Yeah, that's really interesting because it's very clear through the term you threw out there, vibing. I think I absolutely focus mainly on vibing. Like as ridiculous as that sounds, it's not that I wouldn't give a TED talk on why it's important to, prioritize vibing, because I'm aware that it doesn't exactly doesn't necessarily contribute much to the sort of societal uh, situation. But if I have free time open up, like I realize, oh, I don't have anything that I have to do right now. The thing that I'm going to do is vibe. I mean, and to me, that feels like consume. I mean, I want to um, watch a movie or, scroll through social media, unfortunately, or like when I was a kid, I think it was a consume process of making art. I mean, I still do this a lot as well. It's less instant gratification than like consuming media is, but there is a way I think to consume sleep, create art where I'm like kind of chaotically making something happen and then checking to see if it vibes. And it's a very satisfying process. I love to draw people's faces because it's a process of looking at someone's face, consuming what I see, and then trying to make a mark that reflects that, and then assessing whether it fits or whether it doesn't, and then starting back over. And I just get into this really satisfying loop where I could do that for hours and hours and hours. But where I actually break into, play and get off my phone or get off, you know, stop watching a movie or whatever. Um, so it's working out problems with the tribe, and I think, is it fair to say that you doing these interviews is a form of that?
Yeah, because I'm trying to learn the OPS system better, and the way I see it is there's no better way to learn it than to talk directly to the people that actually has those personality type, because like you can, you know, consume information on it, and you could obviously blast the information on it. But the way I see it is when you talk to that person directly, you're not just getting the information from them, you're also getting their vibe, with that NF consume. And the vibe to me is very important because I'm like, oh, so this kind of type feels like this. And it's hard to put into words.
Yeah,
You get what I'm saying?
I
Like,
know. I absolutely know what you mean.
yeah. Like, for example, if I talk to someone that's NETE and NEFI, they're both ENFPs. Vibe completely different. Completely different. So
Yeah, and I think the NF consume thing that you're getting at there for learning, um, it feels to me, or it sounds to me, kind of like how an artificial intelligence learns. Like it's almost subconscious in the sense that there is not a dominant like logical framework that's being consciously created and decided. It's much more like the vibes are being consumed and then integrated into a subconscious detection program, and you draw from a feeling which is in theory like a subconscious, based on a subconscious collection of data, but the data is not in the forefront. You're not actually addressing a framework. So the actual framework creation part for me is a much more conscious and laborious process, but I do respect it and I find joy in it. Um, I guess I do it in sort of small doses, but when I do it, I take it very seriously. And my sort of gut feeling there is that the taking it seriously part is probably consume sleep, but the play that I'm doing is kind of like, if I find myself in a context where I can play, I do that, but I don't think I ever seek it out. So if someone starts talking to me, then I take the opportunity because they did the hard work of instigating it, and then I find it very useful to ask people all sorts of questions and use those to plug into my understanding of the system. But I would never ever start that. Like it's just a stressful idea to me to make the plan to do that.
So if someone were to approach you and be like, "Hey Nick, you want to work on this project together?" You'll be like so excited then because it's like, "Oh shit, I get to anti-play," you know?
Yeah. I think if someone else makes it clear that they are bringing the instigator energy,
Yeah.
then I feel like I can comfortably plug into that, and it's exciting because it means that I'm going to have some exercise of my demons, and maybe some of these like black holes of understanding are going to start to fill up and things are going to make more sense. And like for instance, in this interview right now, part of what was so exciting to me about it was the idea that I would be able to play off of your knowledge and sneak in little questions here and there and kind of get you to help me understand OPS. um
Yeah, no, I'm totally
yeah.
cool with that. And people sometimes they're they'll tell me it's like, oh, I want to do an interview with you, but I don't know what to say. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, you can say what, or whatever. Like you can say whatever you want. You can ask me any question. It's fine. Because like when I do the interview, it's not about like what you're actually saying. I don't really care what people are saying. I care about the vibe that you're bringing in, and that's what I'm trying to take in like all the time. And it's like Dave sent me an audio before when I was getting my social type. He's like, Kendrick, you've been doing this interview since like 2019 or something, and you keep asking the same questions to people. Maybe you should, maybe you stop asking the same question. He said something like that, right? And and I was thinking to
Uh-huh.
myself, I'm like, ah, man, that extrovert sensing is so different from extrovert intuition. It's like, I don't think he gets what I'm doing because it's so subtle. It's like under the radar because it's NE, right? Which you get it because you have
Yeah,
NE like me, right? Like even you coming to my
yeah,
interviews, you're trying to understand more, right? Not necessarily just like talk about yourself, but like so the NE is kind of like it goes underneath and it's like you cannot see it with your eyes or your ears, but it exists and it's real. The fact that I can make all those explainer videos, I can distill all this NF stuff to ST, right? Is a
yeah.
testament that how real NF is. I have it as a demon though, but it's my first two functions still like yours, so it's still there, right? But
Hmm.
I'm kind of curious with the whole vibing thing still, because like that thing is like I'm always shaking my head at it. I'm like, what is this vibing shit? Cause okay, here, let me bring it up. Hold on. Before you give your comment. So I interviewed this one girl who's an INFP, and I asked her, it's like, what do you do with the NF consume? She's like, oh, I'm vibing, and then like, so after she said that, I interviewed someone else who was like an info dom like me, and the person said, "What is this vibing bullshit? Like, we're just gonna sit in a room and like do nothing together and just sit and just enjoy each other's energy. What is this garbage, you know?" And then like, and I was like, "That's how I feel. What the fuck are we doing sitting here vibing? This is like the biggest waste of time." But the older I'm getting, the more I'm starting to realize I'm like, there's something going on with this vibing stuff where you just sit together and once in a while you'll chat, once in a while you're just sitting doing your own thing, and there is something about like maybe you don't have to necessarily directly interact with each other, but each other's presence brings that energy to the room and you can enjoy that energy. And I think the part of me being like a NF demon is how can you enjoy that energy when me having being the TE is thinking there's so much things that needs to be done. Sitting here to vibe is, in my opinion, not the best use of time, because if you want to spend time with someone or whatnot, why don't you do something productive together? Because you're still getting the quality time together. So it's just something I was thinking about. But anyways, I want to hear your perspective though, because I know there is something to this vibing thing that I'm not understanding, and I'm kind of curious to hear from like someone that's like energy dom like you on like what's going on with this whole vibing shit.
Yeah. So of course, as an NF uh person, I fit that stereotype, and I have leaned into, well, not leaned into, but maybe gathered from a lot of spiritual conversations and integrated that into my worldview. And a lot of that comes up in this question that you just asked, of you're familiar with the concept of karma, like not in the sense of like what goes around comes around, but in like Hindu philosophy as I understand it, and I think this is also a big concept in Buddhism, that you are born into the world and you are inherently, you inherit some sensory facts. You enter into the world with a certain race in a certain place at a certain time in history, and you're given trauma, and you're given family members that you didn't sign up for, and all sorts of things. Maybe even you're given your personality type, and so it's kind of like the world signs you up for this course, and you have some lessons to learn, and they're going to be, of course, very hard lessons. And that's your karma. It's like the stuff that you have, description that you've been given by the universe, or by, the whatever it is. If you're a theist, then God gave you this prescription. But otherwise, you can just see it as like, this is my lot in life. And I am very, I guess, as an energy dom, I feel very sort of, I think everyone feels burdened by their karma. And the way I kind of see it is like we do this working through this karma, doing the work, confronting our demons, making the world go round is sort of the price that we pay to be here. And then the gift of being here is vibing. And you know what? I think maybe I will amend that. It could very well be that the gift of being here is different for everyone. And like for you, maybe your gift of the thing that makes it all worth it while for you is play. But for me, um, I sort of see it like when I have done my due diligence and squared away the karma that I had to work through for the day or for the year, and I can afford some time where I don't have to do anything. It's sort of like this moment of like plucking the fruit of my labor and getting to um, step back and appreciate and take it all in and like, look out at the view, stop and smell the roses, and just kind of like stop for a second, take a deep breath, and go, wow, this is a crazy thing that we're all doing, living here on Earth. We're monkeys that are analyzing ourselves and experiencing severe emotions and hurting and working, and we're all so busy all the time. If we can afford just a second to look each other in the eyes and say, like, wow, this is significant, this feels good, I'm glad I'm here. That to me, like, that's what it's all for. And because it's my um NF consume obsession, it's sort of like what I live for, and I'm maximizing that. um but maybe the social type 2 sense of responsibility kind of makes me very cautious about how much time I afford that. And I certainly see it as like a something I have to work for to earn.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. With the combination of the social type two, for sure. Because I
Yeah,
think social type four, I don't think the earning the right to vibe is there. Um, but I,
right.
I was just laughing internally when you were explaining all that stuff. I totally get it, by the way. Basically, if I were to sum up vibing in, one sentence, it's um the happiness of existing and realizing that you exist and its existence is beautiful. So you take the moment to appreciate it and just be with it without judgment or anything else going on. It's almost like a meditative state with vibing, except it's like it's actually very like it's very nice. It's very nice. And actually, like now that you explain it the way you explain it, and I was thinking, I was like, maybe I should start like vibing like 5 minutes a day. Not too much though, because then I feel like because I was thinking about it, I was like, okay, I think vibing is actually very healthy. Actually, it's very healthy in small doses. If you're vibing the whole day, I also feel that you are shitting on what the universe gifted to you. Because I think the universe ultimately wants you to do something with this existence, So I think there's like a fine balance between appreciating and being happy that you exist, and you're part of this universe. But I think there's also like a part of it where like, hey, you know what? I'm giving this gift. I can't throw it away, wasting
Yeah.
away, you know?
uh so one thing, this is like, yeah, you just brought up an interesting idea for me, which is that in spiritual context, one of the seminal pieces of wisdom that people try to impart, so I've gathered, is that the kind of naive perception of this aspiration of reconciling your karma so that you can finally vibe on like on uh, a linear way of thinking is sort of naive. It's like this idea that I'm gonna work really hard and then finally I'll retire and everything will just be bliss. But this like perennial wisdom that comes in is you can sort of sandwich these functions inside of each other, and that the monk or the enlightened person, which of course is an archetype. I'm not speaking of a specific person, but um, the idea or aspiration is that you would learn how to vibe while working, or vibe while playing, or vibe while doing your laundry. And that it's so much easier to vibe if you're, in a white room on a meditation mat and you've moved everything out of the way. But one of my favorite sayings in Buddhism is that before enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water, and then after enlightenment, you chop wood and carry water. And that it doesn't actually change anything. It's just this idea that you can appreciate the beauty of existence and you can revel in it while you're also sweeping the street, or you know cleaning up throw up. I mean, it's all there for you, and it's really a question of your perspective, as opposed to you know the literal things that you're doing in the moment. But you can kind of use the more um, sensory, uh, clear, like what's the word? Obvious forms of those things, like meditation, as a way to model and get used to that mindset, so that you can then like transpose it over other other moments in your life, and start to develop like a practice of you know having balance between those things no matter what you're doing. And it's very aspirational, uh but it makes sense to me, and I think that is kind of like how I frame um my goals with all of this stuff. So working through my demons and all of that. This idea of like learning to love your demons. I think the way I see that is like taking the thing that I know I love, which is my savior, vibing, and then reframing it and starting to believe that um my demons should be included in my savior. Like they should all be friends, and we can do both.
Yeah, I think that's really difficult to get to that point where you can live life doing normal everyday stuff while vibing at the same time. I think that's like a very difficult destination. I think the idea though, I think from what you're trying to say is the practice of it is what's important, because like arriving there is almost impossible. Like there's almost no way to arrive, right? Although maybe people with NF sleep would argue that they can embody that, because because for us we have to consume it, right? So it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
um, Okay, cool. All right, dude. Last question for our interview. And you can throw in some social type stuff here too. ST sleep last, or not, sorry, ST blast last, and specialization last. So you're not only ST blast last, you're also specialization last. So you're like a super demon for like this two things, Like specializing is blast, right? And then ST blast is taking your known information and being able to execute it in a concrete way so that you could produce something that's actually concrete. Um, and it's going to be really important, especially for you because you're number two. You're not going to be someone where the goal is essentially just to connect with friends, which is still important because you're number two, so friends are still important. But when Dave sent me back my audios for social type number two, he said, "Oh, you are number two, Kendrick. You are friends above work. I mean, sorry, you're work above friends. Sorry." And that was like a keyword. So both are saviors, but work comes before friends. You will sneak out to do work, even though you're double activated play. You will sneak out to go alone so you can work, even though there's something more fun around the corner. Of course, you'll still have fun with your friends, but if there's an opportunity to sneak out and do work just to get ahead in your number two scam or whatever, you will do it. And I thought about that. I was like, oh shit, I am doing that all the time. And I bet like a lot of number twos are doing it. And you are number two, dude. So where is this work above friends coming in from a social two times standpoint? And how is your ST blast last hindering you from essentially specializing to get good at something long enough that you can make something out of it, either that be a business or some kind of like enterprise um or a future one at least that you could potentially get involved in.
Yeah. Okay. So, this responsibility to a general work ethic. Like, it's not specific, right? Because specialized would be specific. I have one job that I need to return to, but like responsibility and generalized is more like if there's some random task that's out there for me to do, I'm going to be prioritizing that.
Okay, let me use Dana White as an example. I think Dana White is a social type number two. I don't think he's a number one. The UFC president, I think you know him, right? So oh, your video froze there for a second, so I'll just wait for it to come back. Oh, there we go. Okay, awesome, it's back. So before Dana White bought the UFC with the Fertitta brothers, I think they're on INTJ. So before he did that, he was working in the boxing industry, and in one of the podcasts, he said, "I know how to do every single job except for one within the boxing industry because he, as a number two, he collected all those skill set by doing every single role, right? He wasn't a master of each of the role, but he understand how each of the role works because he's personally worked at all of them. So by the time they bought the UFC, in the more recent podcast, he said that he took all the stuff that he felt was good about boxing and he integrated it to the UFC, and he took whatever was bad and he developed it to a system that he knows because he's already worked at every single avenue about in boxing, so he knows how each aspect works, so he knows how to make each job the best possible way, so that you have this thriving organization, right? Because essentially each position in any organization are the legs that hold that organization up, right? And it's only as strong as the people that's carrying it. So, obviously the save your friends makes you think more about the people that you're working with and how they are valuable to success. They're not just like someone that is like, maybe I know it sounds horrible, but number ones might think, okay, they're just disposable assets, right? Most of all these peasants working for me are disposable assets. But number twos and number fours don't think that way, right? We think of people as like, oh no, they're valuable part of the organization, and essentially the organization won't be here without them, right? So it's being able to respect the specialist by being able to be in the role before empathy at the end of the day, right? So for me personally, like I'm doing this YouTube stuff, right? But like in the past, I've held multiple positions, right? I've been a recruiter, so I know how to hire people, and I've worked as a personal trainer, so I know how to coach people, right? And also teach classes. So like I'm just gathering all this different skill set, public speaking, coaching, recruiting, blah blah blah, interviewing people. And ultimately I have like a big picture goal of like building an organization at some point, right? But then I already have the skill set, so I know what each of them looks like. I want to ask if you have that thought in your head, being a number two. Have you ever thought about that from that
Yes.
perspective?
First, let me just say, Kendrick, that you are so good at interviewing, and a lot of my insecurities in doing this, that I wouldn't be like prepared with the information, are completely swept away by your incredible ability to like on the go prepare me. I mean, you seem to very fluidly recognize when I need a little bit of support and then add that in a very cohesive and fluid way. And I just want to express my appreciation. It's very impressive, and helpful.
Thank you.
So I feel prepared to answer your question now, and it's also making more sense to me. Um, so the way that this seems to work for me is I'm a caricature of a generalist. I've worked at a pizza place, an ice cream place, an art gallery. I was a resident assistant in college, and then I worked at a farm, and then I worked on a chainsaw crew, and then now I'm an English teacher, and I'm a Peace Corps volunteer. And after this, I want to go and start an academic track in psychology. And so, despite how disparate and chaotic all of those tasks that I've been tending to seem, there is a big picture goal, and it has to do with something I think it was either on your explainer video or maybe one of the intros to the socials that I saw associated with the generalist, is this desire for independence. And that really rings true for me. I mean, I have such a fantasy of living in the woods and harvesting sunlight for electricity and rainwater for water, and I just want to carve away my little world, and I want to have a little community, and I want it to be, um, you know, I want it to fulfill all of my, I guess, SI things that would make it feel homey for me. And in order to do this from a young age, I have had the perception that I need to go out and kind of take responsibility for all of the various things that could pop up in that situation because it makes me uncomfortable to imagine offloading those things onto other people. So, I want to be able to do my own electrical work and I want to be able to farm my own food. And I'm making my big picture life decisions according to that gathering process of um, gaining fluency in these many disparate fields. Just enough fluency that I feel I can start. I have a place to start. If I need to consult Google or artificial intelligence or an encyclopedia, I'm comfortable doing that. I'm always ready to learn on the fly, but I want to have like enough familiarity with various things that I feel prepared to put down roots and then rely on myself. And the way that this comes over friends is that everywhere I go, I make these really beautiful, deep friendships, and I love to get to know people, and I love to explore what makes them unique as people. And my friendships are so important to me, but I don't see them as like they don't they don't they don't actually keep me in place. I mean, if there is like a skill that I need to go out and learn so that I can get closer to this pipe dream of relying on myself, and being me against the world, then I'm gonna say, hey, I love you to the ends of the earth, but I'm actually gonna go skedaddle to the ends of the earth, and we can keep up over WhatsApp or we can call every once in a while, but um, despite how deep the love that I feel for you is, I have to put this mission of mine first. And I'm not going to give up on that. And, maybe the fantasy is that once I have generalized to my heart's content and picked up so many skills and put down roots, that I will then um, play into this like social currency, or in a less sociopathic term, the love that I have found in the world. I will call on my friends and maybe entice them to come visit me or even live with me. And then everything will be the Garden of Eden, and uh, it'll be hunky dory, and I'll have my tribe and I'll have my skills, and it'll be like my own little system.
That's so funny, man. I love that. It's so funny. I like how you make it politically correct also by saying, my love for my friends instead of social currency or whatever. But
Yeah, yeah.
when I made my explainer video on the social type number two, I said that it almost feels very TIFE because the work comes before the tribe jubilee, right? Like you still want to celebrate the tribe, but the work has to be done first, you know? So
Huh.
it feels very much like that, like as a number two. It's so weird, like for me, I'm taking one
Yeah.
year away from all my friends in Canada, my girlfriend, so I can be myself and work. That's literally like, how crazy that is. Like people don't understand, like back home, like what are you doing? Why are you going away from everyone to do work? You just do the work at
Mm-hmm.
home? No, I can't. And like I can't explain to them why. Like my girlfriend gets it, but like but only because she had a time to like really understand my perspective, right? And then like the stuff that you said about like having your being completely like able to be like almost like off the grid, you can like have your own place completely independent. My own version of that is like
Mm-hmm.
it's like a doomsday bunker. That's the way I see it. um
Yeah.
but yeah, dude, so I resonate with a lot of stuff that you said. It's from a little bit different because obviously I'm double activated player, right? But more or less kind of like I'm doing the stuff that you said, you know like Dave said, sneaking out to do work. For you, it's like gotta get my independence. The only one thing though that really messed with my head recently about this whole idea of collecting skills so that I can be independent is that video that Dave did on Cody Sanchez. Have you seen that video that he released on her? Oh,
Not yet, not yet.
okay. I won't spoil it to you. Can I spoil one coin for her? Just one coin?
Um, please spoil it. I unless you don't want to spoil it for your YouTube viewers. I'm okay with
Okay,
spoilers.
it's fine. I'll spoil it to everyone. I'll just be a dick. So,
Okay.
anyways,
All
so
right. That was the warning.
she's an IJ, INTJ, consume last, number one, social type number one, multimillionaire, successful, and everything. And something in my head, something just clicked in my head that I feel like, maybe I've been doing this wrong the whole time. So even Dave, who's the number two, was watching this video, and he's like, "Huh, I've been doing this wrong the whole time," you know. So basically, what she did is like before I start any organization, the first thing she does is she hires a number two, and I was like, oh my fucking God. I don't need to collect the skills. I just need a number two working for me, you know? Um, and that like really fucked with my head, right? Because I was like, wait a minute. I've been spending like 20 years of my life collecting all these skills. I didn't even have to do that. I can just hire number two who already did all that shit. And then I can work on the master plan. And then number two, that second thing that popped in my head was like, being consumed last. So double activate blast. She bought a business before she knew anything about it, which you might think, what the hell? Like you know nothing about this business. How are you gonna run it? Well, the thing is, like, especially if you have ADHD, I think she had ADHD actually in the video. Um, when you um have skin in the game, so let's say you purchase something and now you can't return it, wouldn't your ADHD be activated because you're now in a fight or flight situation? Is it not smart? Because now you have no choice but to succeed because you already did it, Like you can't go back now, right? And as an EP, you might be like, oh, I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm trapped, right? But then you think about it, it's like, wait a minute, that's not trap. That's freedom because now you're actually gonna ST accomplish something, you know? You're not gonna be in bullshit and a fairyland, you're actually gonna SD create something. Yes, there's gonna be hardship involved, but you're gonna feel so good at the end of the tunnel. And then the other thing that she did, and I think that's why Dave kept ranting about this girl. Like she said, he kept saying that this girl is like special. Like very, and I actually agree. The next thing that she did was, okay, so you know nothing about this business. So what does she do? Well, she'll go to Reddit, find all the experts in this area, people that already own a business similar to this, already succeeded, or they're like a specialist. She'll pay them money to do a consultation with her, for like between like an hour or two or three, whatever. And she'll gather as much as she can from that person for like the 3 hours, all like the most important stuff. And then she has like a master template already at the end of it of all the important stuff. So you don't have to go out there and learn in 3 hours what you have spent like days after days after days consuming. Someone gave you the bullet point about everything, and you're good to go. And you take this fucking bullet point, you give it to your number two that you hired, you're done. And I was like, this is so fucking brilliant. What the fuck am I doing with my life? And that, as a number two, that's like the thing that like messed with my mind recently. I want to hear what you think now, hearing all this, stuff. Because it is like game changer, honestly.
Yeah. It sounds like a game changer. It sounds like clearly a very good strategy to meet your goals. I mean, that is like pure blast and so efficient and yeah, you're gonna get stuff done like that. The thing that really comes to my mind is how I feel about that.
Yeah.
And how I feel about it is kind of like, maybe I want to do the work. Maybe I don't want to skip to the end because the actual gathering of skills and like closely identifying with the hardships of trial and error and figuring it out for myself, uh that might be like the entire reason I'm doing it. It isn't necessarily to derive a result. Even though I talk about having these big picture goals in my life, the idea of like getting to them, arriving at them organically and feeling like I earned them, um, as silly as it sounds, I think that is just kind of like pretty core to my motivation system. And I wonder how you feel about that because obviously, like, you are an entrepreneurial guy, and that is associated with the number two type. Um, and I guess, entrepreneurs are kind of seen as they do it themselves and they create things from scratch. So I can see how, maybe like what we're discovering through seeing this person do something so opposite to our natural inclination is like the opportunity for balance. Like maybe the answer isn't that I would let go of all of my ownership of the skills and all of my responsibility, but that to find balance, of course, is to look at the other side of the coin and recognize that there are places where it just makes sense. It's just the responsible thing to do to outsource and have people who can catch you up to speed and give you the big picture pointers and help you further things along so that you're not getting stuck, which of course is a big observer fear.
Um, okay. So I saw that video and I really thought about it. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh man, what she's doing is so brilliant. But then I thought about it in terms of like my own life as an ENFP, right? Um, you know, translating it to me, and I'm like, I don't think I can do what she can. I just and I'll explain why. So first, I have SI at the bottom, so I'm scared of being controlled by the physical. So when she did her business, and like I said, it's super brilliant, and obviously, someone of her type would be able to pull it off because she has masculine NI, right? I don't have masculine NI. My N is feminine, so I'm not very confident with the way I project into the future. I can see it, but the confidence is in my SI, which is ironically in the bottom. So it's also not that confident. So I'm not confident with either of my observer functions. I'm confident with my double deciding, but not with those observer functions. SI masculine, but it's in the bottom. NE is in the top, but it's feminine. Terrible. But she has masculine NI, right? So for her, she did the math and she said, okay, if I buy a business and um, I lose money the first 2 years, she'll make money in the following 3, 4, 5 years, right? And then she can sell the business later on for like a huge profit, right? So that's masculine NI right there because she maxed out a lot of her credit cards and line of credit in order to finance this business, right? So, obviously you need to pay for your number two that you hired, okay, to run everything, all the enterprise and stuff. And then you need to, for her, for example, she bought like a laundromat, right? Then you obviously have to repair some of the machines and, make sure that it's operating and make sure that it's actually enticing. You have to pay for marketing. And you have to max out credit cards to do that because the sensory for you is feminine and it's not scary. I have masculine NI, the masculine SI, sorry. You also. So the thought of like being in credit card debt or line of credit debt is scary as hell because the sensory is a threat. It's a threat to us, right? Um, but if you have feminine sensory, that's not a threat. Who gives a shit? The masculine NI is the king. So for me, I'm like, okay, I can't do that. It's brilliant, but I can't do that. However, the other thing that she said though, what I did agree with, you should definitely hire number two. Because Dave said that when he thought of starting a business, whether radio controlled or OPS, the first thing he was thinking about is getting a specialist to work under him, right? Um, and I think the ironic thing about OPS is like, if Shan is the number one, then they already have a number two, which is Dave. So he's the one running around doing all the stuff, while Shan is actually the master planner behind the scene, right? So it makes sense to get specialists because they already have both those bases covered. But if you don't have a number two, because you need a number two, right? To run all the stuff, because like otherwise you don't have time to actually do the master plan if you're running around doing all this stuff, right? Then your business is not going to go anywhere. You're just working for work's sake, which I get what you said earlier about like, yes, maybe you enjoyed collecting those skill set. And I did enjoy collecting those skill set myself. My FI did enjoy it. But I didn't enjoy collecting all of it. I enjoyed maybe 80% of it. So yeah, you could argue it's like, okay, you know what? You're not gonna get everything right. That's just part of life. And sometimes it's good to know what you don't want, which is also true. So maybe it's not completely waste time. But I think because like one of my FI values is courage and bravery. Uh, I was just thinking, I'm like, wish I had the courage to hire a number two. And that to me is my that thing that keeps popping in the back of my head. It's like or partner up with a number two. Because I think if I had a number two working with me, oh my God, it would be like clutch. Because like but you know what? At the end of the day, dude, no regrets. Because like in YouTube, for example, I was kind of what was I was talking to Austin about it recently, I think. Um, like I literally know like when it comes to YouTube, I know how to edit videos now, like using Final Cut Pro. Um, and I'm learning how to use Canva right now to make thumbnails and stuff. So I feel like I'm learning all the skill set that I'm really glad I have because I was watching Johnny Harris. Again, he's like one of my favorite YouTubers. And like the way I make my videos, I'm basing it off his style. He is my role model for what the video should look like. And he's the number two, and he has specialist level for explainer videos. And like that to me is like the ultimate goal. Being a number two with specialist level skill set. And now he has a team, and he's the one like moving pieces. But if the team went away, he can do everything by himself, and that to me is like that is like that to me is chef's kiss.
This is actually something I'm curious about with the how things overlap between animals and the social type,
Yeah,
because when I was watching the videos that Dave and Chan did about my type twins, one of them was Weird Al,
yeah.
and they were talking about how these consume sleep ENFPs tend to have a sense of like mastery over the thing that they do, um, where the consume sleep process is kind of like a process of polishing that they sort of like obsessively, polish their craft. And to me, that sounds analogous to specialization. So I might, I think I get a little confused there where, if I'm a number two, in theory, specialization is my last function. But I do see in my relationship with like creative stuff that consume sleep loop that I can get into does derive a kind of I don't know what you'd say. I guess like a sort of specialized quality. Um, so I'm not sure how that really works. I don't know if that's like just things taking on similar patterns or how that overlap works.
I think the problem with the way Dave explains some stuff usually is he's throwing SE out. It's just like, oh, here's a sensory example. Here, throw it, throw it. It's like disorganized, right? So
Yeah.
it kind of like will throw people off a loop. But I think the way I see it is because he did say that blast is correlated with being a specialist, and I think that makes a lot more sense because and I'm just gonna go with what Bruce Lee said, right? Like he said something like he's not scared of like the person that has like so many different skill sets. He's scared of that one person who mastered like one kick or something like 1,000 times or something or 10,000 times or whatever. I'm butchering this saying whatever, but like the point is like if you look at the core definition of blast, it's taking known information and executing on it, right? Either with your T or FE, right? So, and if you look at what Bruce Lee is doing and what he's saying, you can only achieve mastery from execution of the same thing over and over and over again, right? Um, it's like the other saying, it's like you can't be good at kung fu if you're watching kung fu movies. You have to do kung fu. And if when you do something that's blast, essentially, or play, I guess you can get away with play a lot. Also, um, so so I think it's kind of like muddy the way he explained it, but like the way I interpret it is like is in that from that aspect. Now, yes, you could because it is true that you can use sleep to um improve on something also because obviously visualization is that does work. Like people who play basketball, they visualize shooting the ball in. Tennis players, they visualize getting having the perfect forehand or whatever. So visualization does help in that aspect. But if you look at it carefully, it's like, wait a minute, look at what specialization are doing. They have blast and sleep as their supposed saviors, right? Because sleep activates flex. So visualizing how to do something plus the actual act of execution equals the best at that one thing. You know what I mean? So the consume it's like, yes, consume is good, but it's like consuming new skills, right? How does a new skill improve the existing skill? Um, a lot of like specialist people say, "Oh, I'm consuming." Yeah, but you're consuming information on that box. So it's not really new.
Yeah.
And it's within that box. It's more like sleep, you know. And if you look at like a number one, and number one has savior flex and savior generalist. So equals savior sleep and savior consume, right? Well, that is number one because if you just look at it carefully, sleep is your DI. It's inside you. It's also internal self awareness. So it's like your ego from inside, right? You know, and consume is your external self awareness. So that's how other people perceive you. So if you're number one, it's almost like the consume is like, look at me, and then the sleep is like, I'm the shit. You know, so it like if you look at it from that perspective, it's like, oh, DI on top of DI, so um yeah. And so that's how I perceive it.
Yeah. Okay. The way you perceive it was just explained so clearly, and I appreciate it so much. Um, it makes sense. It makes sense that as a blast heavy person, someone would do a thing so many times that, even just literally in the context of muscle memory, you're inherently going to arrive at like a pretty polished harmony in doing that thing just through the brute force of doing it again and again. And as a consume sleep last type, I don't do that. And I literally told you that my in my relationship with my diet, I don't cook the same meal twice. Like it would make my skin crawl to follow a recipe again and again and again. So inherently in that way, I'm never gonna perfect a recipe. It's never gonna be like, oh, here's Nick's signature roast pork, because it's gonna be different every time. And that will help me maybe like in the big picture, it'll help me become skilled uh at cooking in a very specific way, but it will not make me a specialist. And that is a clear distinction now. I get that.
Yeah, being a
Yeah.
specialist is boring. So I mean, obviously the specialist people like it, but for us as number two, like for me, I like when
Yeah.
I'm editing videos and I've already spent like 2 days, 2 full days, 18 like 16 hours doing it. And I'm like everything in my head being a number two, because it's like a cognitive dissonance, right? Because I have blast savior, so I'm doing specialist stuff, even though I hate it. So I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, fuck my life, I hate my life, kill me right now, worse than closest news, like and yeah, that's pretty much it, man. You can't, it's horrible, being an EP number two, I think is or number yeah, being an EP doing number three stuff, I think is horrible in my opinion. But anyways,
It
dude,
is. Yeah, that's
sorry, yeah,
kryptonite.
yeah. Anyways, we gotta wrap up the interview here. So Nick, thanks again for coming out and sharing more about your life and having this like it was a fun discussion. I actually learned a lot from you also about especially about the vibing stuff. That was really good.
Yeah.
You did blast you blasted it really well too, by the way.
Thank you. Wow.
At least for me. I mean, I understood. I don't know if the people watching understood what you said because it's very NF. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I got it. So.
Wow. Well, yeah, this has been an absolute pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. Again, I'm going to praise your skills. I think you're an incredible interviewer, and you've obviously found a niche that you work well in here, and it's certainly helping people. I think your style of explanation and exploration is really like filling a gap in this in this community that's raising each other's capacities to think in these terms and understand people in this way. Um, and I appreciate it. So for the people watching, Kendrick has paid me no money to say that, but I think he's an incredible person, and I really appreciate what he's doing.
All
Yeah,
right, dude. I really appreciate those kind words.
yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Take care, man.
So
Don't let
take
the
care.
rat kill you.
Thank you, thank you. Okay, bye bye.